So the first movie that I am reviewing is Marvel Studios and Disney Studios, Black Widow, which was directed by Kate Shortland and executive produced by Scarlett Johansson, and like I said before, is a Marvel Studios film. Now, if I had to give this film a grade, mm, I wish I had better news, but if I had to give it a grade, I would give it a C minus. Caution, because I do want to let you know that ahead of time that this review will also contain a lot of spoilers for the film. So if you have not yet seen the film or don't want it spoiled for you, then please turn away now, because I'm going to talk a lot about spoilers in this review. So anyway, so just a brief synopsis of how this movie begins or what this movie is about. So Black Widow is about Natasha Romanoff, aka the Black Widow, and her sort of personal journey. I guess you could call it for closure, or at least it sort of starts that way. But then it ultimately becomes this like action packed thrill ride that like sort of dives into the world of spies and espionage and assassins, and basically, in short, it goes into all of that, but it also deals with a lot of unexpected dark themes, especially for the Marvel universe. It definitely does some things different and goes to some places that the other films have not yet so far. In that regard, it is a little bit more mature. It kind of pushes the PG-13 limit, but there are some very mature things in this movie. I give this film a C minus, which is on the lower end of the scale. So, I wasn't too fond of it coming out of it, but I still am thinking about what happened in it. My main gripes of the film would be, I guess, the tone of the film. This film is a spy thriller. It's an action adventure movie, basically like all the other Marvel movies are. However, um, it while it does some things different, it also does a lot of things the same, but not necessarily. It doesn't necessarily work in this film. I feel like the trademark Marvel humor is definitely in full effect and full force in this movie. This movie has two tones. It has a very serious tone, and then it also has a very kind of jokey, feel slash tone to it also. I didn't really, in my opinion, I felt like if the film had just played it straight, the whole movie, if it had just been devoid of any humor, whether forced or unintentional, whatever, you know what I mean? If it tries to be funny, I feel like that's where it sort of, is a little bit weaker, or is a lot weaker. And unfortunately, the humor does take up, I would say, a good amount of the film. It mostly comes from David Harbour, who you might know from Stranger Things. He plays Hopper on that show. He's okay in this movie, but I felt as though his character shouldn't have been played for laughs as much as he was in this film. Since this movie revolves around Natasha's past, and we're getting to know all these people from her life and the people that raised her, people that grew up with her, you know, it should have sort of taken itself a little bit more seriously in that regard. There's one or two scenes in here that I felt just didn't go anywhere, didn't really serve any purpose. David Harbour and Rachel Weisz, are also in this movie, and they play sort of surrogate parents to the two girls, or to the two women, and so they're all sort of this like kind of one big dysfunctional slash loving family, even if it's not necessarily real or whatever. That contained a lot of wasted potential with their characters and what ultimately happens and whatnot. Like I said before, I felt like this movie has two tones to it. Has a serious tone and has a very jokey tone, which is very characteristic of a lot of Marvel movies. And I'm not gonna lie, I was disappointed that it didn't go all the way dark. It wasn't serious the whole way through. I felt like what happens at the end, where again, spoiler alert, but all the good guys pretty much live. They all live. Like none of them die. And I felt as though, going in, I was expecting this movie to be a little bit more serious than it was. And so the fact that nobody dies, I mean, not even like one of the main villains, Taskmaster, also makes it out alive. And not only that, but anyway, yeah, I'll go into that later. But basically, yeah, it feels like the stakes are very low in this film. All the good guys survive. Natasha obviously lives because, like I said, this is a prequel, so she goes on to be in an Infinity War and Endgame. I guess chronological order after this movie. But it just felt like this movie, there were no stakes, and also this movie kind of sets up a conflict for other future projects to come in the Marvel universe, especially the end credit scene. That is one of my main gripes, is that this film, while it's big, there's a lot of big action sequences in it. The stakes at the same time feel really, really small. And so that sort of leads me into my next issue with the film, Taskmaster. Oh my god. Taskmaster, man. Okay, so I don't know if any of you guys listening read the comics at all, or playing the video games, or watch the cartoons, whatever, anything like that from Marvel. But in the comics, originally, Taskmaster is a feared and known assassin, who has the rare and very dangerous and awesome ability to mimic any of his opponent's fighting styles, whether defensive or offensive. He's known for that, and he's known to be a very deadly character in the comics, at least. In this movie, however, the movie starts with, Taskmaster and Natasha. They get into it. Taskmaster is trying to retrieve a set of vials that are basically that Natasha has, that were originally given to her by her surrogate sister. And what these vials are, and basically vials called red dust. This red dust has the ability to sort of wake people up from their mind control, because there is mind control, there's brainwashing, there's all sorts of devices like that that are used in the film, and that Natasha and her surrogate family are basically trying to, free the other Black Widows from. They're basically trying to liberate from that, so that they don't have to keep fighting. They're not brainwashed, they're not mind controlled. And so that's the main objective in this film. Now, their first fight scene on the bridge or whatever, is very good. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. It's very short, but it is a good, brutal, and very well choreographed fight scene, and it is also a good display of Taskmaster's powers. In fact, it might actually just be probably the only really full-on display of Taskmaster's ability to mimic, Natasha's like fighting moves or whatever. So she doesn't really technically have any powers, but he's able to do that pretty well, and he proves to be a pretty good foil for Black Widow, until he knocks her off a bridge and she gets away. After that, it's all downhill for this character. I felt like Taskmaster could have been the main villain of this film, and I wouldn't complain. I mean, if they had honestly just respected the character's origins more, and not deviated from that at all, which they do a lot in this movie, I felt like it would have been more effective. Instead, what we get here, again, spoiler alert, Taskmaster is not who Taskmaster is in the comics. In fact, Taskmaster isn't even a guy, or really a quote unquote assassin. But in this film, we don't get that version of the character. In this film, we get a version of the character that is basically has been changed so as to have direct ties to the actual main villain, who is known as Dreykov, and he's played by Ray Winstone in this movie. Ray Winstone is pretty good in this movie. He's very despicable, very unlikable, plays a very devious, perverted, just really all around evil bad guy. The more traditional, mustache twirling bad guy who hell bent on controlling other people and abusing his power and lording his power for other people. So Taskmaster is actually Dreykov's daughter. So Taskmaster, like I said before, has direct ties to Dreykov, and actually Taskmaster has also been brainwashed, by her father, into fighting, and she apparently has this chip implanted into her neck, and so Dreykov has been using her for that reason, and he basically treats his own, I guess at this point in the film, he's basically revealed to have been behind this whole thing, especially the creation of Taskmaster and whatnot, and so there's that. So, and then at the very end, to add insult to injury and to make things worse for fans of the character like me, Taskmaster doesn't even stay villainous. Taskmaster is sort of taken in by the other surviving good guys. And, I'm assuming that, I don't know if we'll ever see the character again. After this movie, I could care less, because they ruined it. They shot all over the character. But basically, Taskmaster is taken in by these surviving good guys, by the other heroes. And I guess, she's going to be accepted or reprogrammed or, reconditioned to be a good guy now. I have no idea. I don't give a shit, honestly, but I'm just ranting on about the character because I'm not happy with what they did with it. As far as the other characters go, like the main characters, on the good guy side, Scarlett Johansson is actually pretty good in this movie. I will admit that when she first appeared in Iron Man 2 back in 2010, I wasn't quite fond of her portrayal of the character, again, because it was very different from the comics. But then, as time went on, the last decade or so, I've actually I've actually kind of grown to like her character a little bit more. And like I said before, this movie is her first solo film, and most likely will probably be her only one, her last solo film. Um, but yeah, so but for that, I thought ScarJo did a pretty good job. She also executive produces this movie, and yeah, I mean, she has some emotional beats to it. As always, her fighting skills are top notch in this movie. You can tell that she put in a lot of work into the character and into training hard for it, and for the physicality of it. She always brings it, and this movie is no exception. Um, Now, for her co-star, one of her co-stars, Florence Pugh, she's also pretty good in this movie. She, like I said before, she plays Yelena, and she and Natasha are quote unquote surrogate sisters in this movie. When the movie opens, we get a little bit more backstory into both their childhoods and how they grew up together, and how they were ultimately sort of forced into this program of Black Widow program, basically, which is and this is gonna sound kind of dark, but like I said before, Marvel, this movie does go into some dark places that other movies haven't. And so, for one of the themes, what happens in this movie early on is we get to see that sort of like slash and slash abduction of these people when they're really really little, and they're basically forced into the Black Widow program. So from there on out, they become trained assassins, and so that is part of Natasha Romanoff's backstory in this movie. And Florence Pugh, she does a pretty good job. I mean, she's basically like the co-lead of this film along with Scarlett Johansson, and I feel like at times she almost steals the movie from ScarJo. Actually, she might be that good. She's very solid. She has a lot of sassy one-liners. She's a smartass, but she's also a badass too in the fact that she can hold her own, fighting wise, and you get to see a lot of that in the movie. You get to see there are also some emotional beats to it. She has some really great emotional scenes in the film, and I can't wait to see what happens, with her character going forward in the MCU. If Marvel can do a good enough job with her as they did with Scarlett Johansson's character, then I have faith that this character will turn out to be pretty solid. So as far as that character goes, she was great. Um, David Harbour, who plays Red Guardian, he was pretty good. But honestly, like I said, one of my main gripes of the film was that this movie has two tones to it. It has a very dark and serious tone to it, and then the other hand, it has a very kind of jokey feel to it, also, which is more lighthearted. And I feel like David Harbour, unfortunately, was kind of used to the effect of being the comic relief in this film. I didn't, I felt like his characters should have been explored a little bit more. Should have had more opportunity for, for opportunity for dramatic moments, especially with the girls, and I mean, his whole quote unquote family and life that they all had together. I feel like that could have been more played up, for drama and for intrigue. But instead, we get a lot of the traditional Marvel humor, and a lot of it revolves around his character. There's but on the plus side, there's a pretty cool sort of jailbreak scene where ScarJo and Florence Pugh's characters are breaking him out of a Russian prison, and they inadvertently create or cause an avalanche. So it's just one of the many cool things that happens in that scene. But yeah, so other than that, he was okay. I mean, he was David Harbour, and he was entertaining. So I'm not saying that he didn't do a good job, because he did a good job what he had, what they gave him. But I still feel like there could have, his character was kind of underutilized that way. Although not as bad as Taskmaster was. That's a whole nother abomination. Um, so I guess the other main character in this film would be played by Rachel Weisz, who is the surrogate mother and the surrogate wife to the characters that I just mentioned. And she also has a lot of, I guess she might have a little bit more of a serious arc in this movie than David Harbour's character does. I just felt like her, even though she doesn't have a lot of screen time, she was very good in the scenes that she was in, and plus they take her character a little bit more seriously in this film. Unfortunately, I don't really have a ton to say because, like I said, she's not in it that much, not as much as you think she would be. But with what she had, she did a good job. Um, and then there's a couple of supporting players like Ray Winstone, and then the other actor whose name I can't pronounce, so I won't try. But they're both good too. Everyone does a solid job acting wise. There's not a whole lot of things to nitpick here and there. The things that I was tearing apart, like how certain characters were underused or portrayed in the film, absolutely. Those characters and the direction and writing of those characters was horrendous, absolutely horrendous. Listen, if you haven't seen this movie yet and you're excited and you're going to watch it for Taskmaster, you're going to be severely let down, really let down. I'm just letting you know right now. Um, so yeah. Anyway, so as far as the other critiques of the film, for action wise, it really, I mean, it has a lot of hand to hand combat, which is to be expected because Black Widow has always been a hand to hand, warrior slash combatant in all the earlier Marvel movies. She doesn't really have any powers per se, but she has her training, and this film goes into her training, how she was trained, where she was trained, who she was trained by, and a lot of this, film revolves around that conflict of her trying to sort of revisit her childhood or her past, and trying to right the wrongs, basically, or definitely serves as sort of a send up to the character, but also provides a lot of closure for the character. I feel like that's a big reason why this movie exists, is to build upon, to explore, Natasha Romanoff's backstory and her relationships with the people from her childhood and growing up, and for the Red Room and all that stuff. It does that, and to a degree, it does it well. But yeah, you know what I mean. Like I said, I got to be honest and sort of pick apart the big problems of this movie, some of which I already talked about. But I will also say that I just felt like this movie felt very anticlimactic, and it's not just because we already know what happens to Natasha in Endgame, but it's also just the fact that the stakes in this movie seem so low. They seem so small. And by the end of the movie, all the good guys are left alive, and most of the bad guys are dead. And not only that, but like I said before, Taskmaster lives and is, I guess, now gonna be, helped or saved by the good guys, and they're gonna help her sort of, regain her footing and get her mind and life back. But that's not who Taskmaster is. I'm sorry. I know I spent like at least 15 to 20 minutes talking about Taskmaster, but come on, when you have a character so cool as Taskmaster, you cannot do that character as wrong as you did in this movie. Oh my god. Anyway, so I mean, there's, I guess, and okay. So as far as, like, I guess one of the, I'll start wrapping this video up or review up, but I will say that on the positives, the acting was very strong. Scarlett Johansson definitely delivers. I mean, she's a great actress already, but this being her first Marvel movie and most likely her last solo Marvel movie, is, she brings it. She brings her A game, and I thought she's very good. I'm very happy for her that she got her own movie finally, and yeah, so and then also there are a couple of really dark themes in this film, and while they're very dark and kind of upsetting, I applaud Marvel for definitely going there. There is one scene where Ray Winstone, who plays the main villain in this movie called Dreykov, where he's basically punching Natasha Romanoff in the face repeatedly, and the camera does not pan away when he does that. You see everything, and all the while, she's basically taunting him, which further provokes him. And it is a very intense scene. It might make people feel a lot of, feel uncomfortable or whatever. If you don't like that sort of thing, then yeah. But no, I applaud Marvel, not because it's violence on women or anything like that, but because they had the balls, quote unquote, to go there and to show something like that and not cut away. Other sort of, surprising scenes. So the beginning has, like I said before, it serves as an intro to Natasha, to Natasha Romanoff's life growing up, and her sort of, transition into becoming, the person or the woman that she ultimately is, or at least was, or whatever. There is included in that montage. There are a few scenes of Natasha and all these other girls who, apparently nobody, quote unquote, as the main bad guy describes it, that, quote unquote, nobody wanted. Nobody wants them. Nobody wants these girls. So he basically goes in and takes advantage of it, and takes these children and basically turns them into, brainwashed assassins. And so, that so that happens. But it's just, yeah. So like I said before, Marvel definitely goes to some pretty dark places in this movie. A lot of places that the other movies have not, or at least haven't yet, up to this point. And for that, I do applaud Marvel for taking a chance. I do applaud Marvel for trying to take itself a little bit more seriously in that regard, and maybe not necessarily shy away from more mature or disturbing things like that, of which, some of which are real issues in the real world. So I can, in terms of growth and maturity, I definitely applaud Marvel for having the courage to go to those places. So there's basically that. What else? What else? What else? Honestly, I would say keep your expectations low. By now, we're now 13 years into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and in terms of popularity, I would say that it might even be at its peak right now. But I also want to tell people to lower your expectations, because you're going to hear a lot of hype about this movie in the next few weeks or whatever. Because Marvel is back. This is actually the first film that they've released since 2019, before the whole situation that we are in right now. And I think because of that, the hype might be even stronger now. But I do, like I said before, I do want to caution you. I do want to say that you should have low to no expectations, because while this movie gets some things right, it also gets a lot of things very, very wrong. And I'm not going to repeat myself for the sake of sounding repetitive. I'm not going to do that. All I'll say is keep your expectations lower. Um, I mean, I think at the end of the day, is it the worst movie ever made? No, not even close. I've seen a lot of bad movies, and I wish, especially for this series and I'm doing for this channel now, I wish I could start on a more positive note. But unfortunately, I can't, because I chose to hold off doing that until I saw Black Widow, and now I'm being honest as hell about that movie. Um, you know, I I I mean, what can I say? You know what I mean? Like I have seen, like I said, I've seen a lot of movies, and I do like the Marvel movies. I do like Iron Man. I like I like Iron Man. I like Black Panther. I like, Captain America and Winter Soldier, and I'm also a fan of, the TV shows that they're starting to do too, also this year. Um, but in terms of being let down and, you know being, I guess, among the rarer, fewer Marvel movie disappointments, this movie definitely let me down. This movie let me down in a lot of ways, and which is a shame, because I enjoy the character of Black Widow. I think Scarlett Johansson has done an amazing job with the character, and has come a long way since she first debuted back in 2010's Iron Man 2. Um, I will also say that one of the other weaknesses to this film is that, like Iron Man 2, it serves as sort of a launching pad for a lot of other, potential, whether sequels or other movies in this universe or TV shows in the universe, because they're all connected. And I felt like this movie definitely sets up, quite a few things in it that will definitely be, built upon and, explained on, in the subsequent films and TV shows that are coming. Um, so that's basically it, guys. I mean, like I said before, grade wise, I give this a C to C minus. At best, it's a C. At worst, it's a C minus, close to a D. Well, yeah, C minus to D plus. I mean, so going forward, guys, I will be definitely recording and uploading movie reviews, as regularly as I can. And so check back every weekend. Before, I don't know, before Friday or the weekend, I'll be trying to do it just so that you can check out my review before deciding whether or not you want to go to the movies this weekend and pay a lot of money, and be surprised or be disappointed.